Brian Fantz has joined us and is available for questions. Thought we'd just start off by perhaps reflecting on not only this great finale we have, but the whole season, and then perhaps looking ahead to next year and some of the things that our great media will be able to look forward to in 2012.
Good. Well, thanks, David, and good afternoon, everyone. I would say a couple things that I've said before in previous get-togethers with the media, that obviously we think the season has gone very well. TV ratings, attendance, still some issues depending on what market you're talking about. Obviously, the economy continues to weigh heavy on the sponsorship component of our sport, and we rely more on sponsorships than anybody in sports, so that obviously has an effect on us. But the quality of racing throughout the year, the emphasis on winning that we keep adjusting to, I think this undeniably is paying dividends. And I would also say one thing about that. You know, there was some wisdom or conventional wisdom some time ago that if you put more on the line, you put more emphasis on winning, in motorsports that really wouldn't make a big difference because, you know, they're all out racing as hard as they can every lap and wouldn't really make that big a difference. And that's not true. And we now know that's just not true. When there's more on the line, you're seeing every weekend Tony Stewart and Carl and everybody elevate, and their entire teams are elevating their performance. And the competition gets better when that happens. And you saw that last year with Denny and Jimmy. So naturally, we're going to continue to look at the point system in a way that, and the other portions of how we regulate and conduct the events, with an emphasis on just that. But one more thing as this weekend unfolds, and naturally we're all excited because we're fans too to watch and see what happens on Sunday. The other thing that is happening in the marketplace is some really, really good things. We held a green summit for the first time in Miami Beach yesterday. Had a number of companies that are doing some really, really great things in our industry that are environmentally smart and productive, share their experiences. And then we had a lot of new companies that were interested in what NASCAR was up to in the space that where their technologies and their emphasis is. And so they joined us as well. My hope is that we'll continue to march down that road and get better and smarter, and we'll attract more companies as a result of that. And then just this morning, we awarded a $250,000 check to the Homestead Hospital and the neonatal care center, trying to invest in a hospital as part of our NASCAR Foundation, and my mother and so on. So was there to present that. So in addition to an exciting weekend, the industry is really celebrating the fact that they're here in South Florida and doing some great things. So with that, I'll happy to take some questions.
Let's go with Jim over here, Lenny.
Jim Hunter, Charlotte Observer. Brian, in particular light to your comments about the winning, 8 years ago, Matt Kenseth won the championship before the chase, had one win for the season, seemed to cause an uproar, and thus the chase format was developed. Carl has an opportunity on Sunday to, again, win a championship with only one race week win in the entire season. Why should that be looked on any different as what Matt Kenseth did in 2003?
Because that's not why we didn't change the point system because somebody had one win or a few wins. That was never the emphasis. The emphasis was that we could create bigger moments if we had a more playoff-style atmosphere as opposed to a complete consistency model in the years past. And that we've achieved that goal, not all the time because it's obviously out of our control. And I would tell you the one win that Carl had might make the difference, though. You know, he only leads by 3 points. That's the one win in Las Vegas. May well make the difference tomorrow. I don't know. So, but clearly we cannot make winning the only thing. There's 43 teams racing every weekend. So this is not but But however, we can make sure that we emphasize that. We can make sure we reward that, and we're pretty happy that translates into better racing.
Bruce?
Bruce Martin, SportsIllustrated.com. Not taking anything away from Jimmy's great accomplishment of 5 straight there, but how much do you think an uptick of interest that there's been to have a new face fighting out for the championship this year?
I don't know, but I do know that this will mark the end of one of the historic runs in all of sports with 5 consecutive championships. I would have never thought I would ever witness that. So, Jimmy, that's just a marvelous achievement. And Carl and Tony both are very popular, and so they're creating new moments, and we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Let's go with Claire, then Jenna, and then Bob.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. There has been an uptick in the ratings, television ratings, and I'm wondering, is that what you expected? Is that a slow surge to what you think will be more? Is it less than you thought it would be? And what are you working on during the off season that will be your main goals for next year?
Claire, we've always said that ratings go up and down because of many, many things, and the things we can control are showcasing the racing, telling our story, and giving the drivers some big moments to race for. And that will help us. You never know how it all, percentage-wise, what really matters the most. But we know that's the NASCAR we want. We want to see these elevated performances, and they're just fun to watch. And we want to see what's happened. And I'm confident if we do that and do a lot of other things, we will have better ratings and better attendance.
Jenna?
Jennifer, AP. Brian, NASCAR has fined at least 4 times that we know of drivers for disparaging remarks they've made, and NASCAR did not go public with those fines. Other leagues do. They do publicly say you can't talk about the officials, you can't talk about this or the league. Why does NASCAR take the position that these matters should be private and not public? And are there others that we don't know about?
There could be. It's why they're private, right? Well, let me tell you what we've done in the last couple years. We've taken a position that drivers are going to be able to speak their mind and criticize the sport way more than any other sport would allow. So let's start with that. However, there has to be some limits, and we thought those limits were being exceeded in the last couple of years because you can't denigrate the sport. You just can't do that, and we're not going to accept that. And you know what's interesting? Almost every driver has come up to me at one time or another and said, I'm glad you did that because I don't like it when somebody just says something that's irresponsible about the sport. And let me say one other portion of this. They are perfectly fine to criticize anything we do, any call we make. They can say they don't like it, they disagree with it. We make the right call. That's fine. But we're not going to let anyone, denigrate the sport, and that's going to continue. Now, whether we make the fines public or private, we didn't see a benefit to making them public. If there's some benefit to that, we'll take a look at it. But that's the reasoning behind the penalties.
Don't you think that there's a harm when it comes out after and people as fans take the stance? Fans take the stance of why do they do this in secret? What else are they doing in secret? And in factuality, we're talking about secret fines today instead of your big Game 7 moment.
Well, that's up to you to what to write and be interested about. I can only tell you that I take every question. I never say no comment. I've explained it. If there's a better way, so there's this idea that there's a bunch of things going on behind the curtain. We've never been more transparent. We've never had more of everything, and that's the way it should be. And if there's a benefit to announcing them to the public, to the media, we will take a look at that. We just didn't see a benefit at the time. Maybe there is a benefit.
Bob, then Lewis, and then we'll go to Mark.
Bob Hocker, SceneDaily.com. How much did the Kyle Busch situation at Texas concern you, and how do you balance boys have at it and retaliation with what appears to be a non-definitive line?
That's not accurate, and it was very concerning to all of us, and there was a swift and very severe penalty on that, as you know. So and there is a line, and the drivers, and they may walk around and say sometimes that they're not clear about it, but they know the line. We have these conversations with them all the time. What you got to remember, this is a contact sport. And so, you're going to, and we thought a couple years ago that we were over-regulating the events, and we wanted to give more, authority back in the driver's hands, and that's been good for NASCAR. But there's always a limit. You can't do anything you want. We will look at it, and we talk to the drivers. If they're close to the line, we have a conversation that day. If they go over the line, you see what we'll deal with that too. So this idea that there's nobody knows where a line is, not true, not accurate.
Lewis.
Lewis, Frank Reuters. Brian, corporations all across the United States have been raising funds for the last years or so while you guys are looking for sponsorship. What is NASCAR doing to get corporate treasurers to open up the purse strings and become sponsors at a time when NASCAR really needs the employment? If the President of the United States is not getting him to do that, I'm not sure what we're going to be able to do to figure that out. But having said that, obviously we just held a Green Summit. We were doing things that attract new companies, new technology to validate in our sport. We're renewing a lot of companies. And some companies, and it happens all the time, every year for us, will pull back their sponsorship or commitments or leave altogether. That's just a reality of having, hundreds of companies involved in this sport. But we're working harder than ever with the teams and their business groups to tell the NASCAR story and the value that it brings to sponsors. We're having success with that. I think if you ask the individual team owners, we've never had a more offensive strategy, doing it together to bring in as many new companies as possible.
Then we'll go Al and Lynn and Dave.
Mike Hembry, Speed.com. Brian, after the test you ran this week in Daytona, what are the goals you're looking for Daytona in February? And is one of them a virtual complete elimination of the tandem drafting? Is that one of the things you're after?
It's one of the things we are after. We would prefer to eliminate tandem racing in the manner that it exists today, and there's no question about that. We are working on rolling back the clock to traditional Daytona and Talladega races, and we'll have to see how that goes. I think majority of fans would like to see that, and so would we.
Al?
Yeah, Brian, Al Pierce, Motor Week. You mentioned a bit ago that you answer every question, you don't duck anything. There was a time when your grandfather and your father attended every race. They did these press conferences almost every Saturday or Sunday behind the hauler or wherever. We don't see you very often, and we wonder, why is it that you think the sport that you're not needed at every weekend, or just why are you not around more often for these press deals?
I frequently say, and I've said this before, if I thought that I was the last one out of every event that we do, and I turned the light off on the way out, that would grow the sport in some way, I would do it. So it's not about what we have is a different sport than it was 10, 15 years ago. And that's real clear. And, I don't publish my schedule, but it's pretty busy. And we feel like we're managing the sport. We know we're managing the sport the best way that we need to grow the sport.
Lee Spencer, Fox Sports. Could there come a time in the future where all the penalties are transparent, that they're all, black and white, so it can be reported as normal rather than just finding things out on the internet, secondhand? Secondly, Bob Pockrass earlier mentioned the Kyle Busch incident. Can you explain to me, other than Brian Vickers' situation last week, where he was not under caution as Kyle Busch was with Ron Hornaday at Texas, why Brian Vickers, something wasn't done about him when he in fact just came out of nowhere and plowed into Matt Kenseth for no apparent reason other than retaliation?
Well, there is something being done about that, and we're having a conversation about that, and they are very different circumstances. I mean, one was on a mile-and-a-half track, a lot faster. One was under caution, which is very significantly different. I mean, racing accidents under green are always subjective, even though you may say this one wasn't. But typically, there's always a debate about who went where. And Ron Hornaday was racing for a championship, and we value that greatly. So there's lots of differences. And it doesn't mean though that we didn't think the line was almost met or somewhat close, whereby we would have a conversation to explain that, and we will be having a conversation with both Brian and Matt regarding really what happened in Martinsville the week before, which is a short track, and obviously a lot of contact happened in that particular race, which is normal. So, like I said earlier, there's a line. The drivers know where the line is, and if they should be guessing about that for some reason, we're happy to sit down and walk them through it.
Let's go Dave, Nate, and then let's go in Fuego after that. Dave, right there, Andrew.
David Caravella, NASCAR.com. Brian, Ricky Stenhouse is probably going to win the Nationwide Championship tomorrow. The decision NASCAR made to limit drivers to one championship run, has NASCAR gotten what they wanted out of that, or is that policy going to be reviewed at any point?
Well, all policies are reviewed, but I think it's worked just the way we want it to. We want to showcase the young drivers in their own series and still have the participation with drivers, with a lot of experience, and that's exactly what we've gotten. I think it's been good for the young drivers to get some different notoriety and the honor and prestige of winning a championship, and the money that comes with that, and all the rest has been a good thing.
Nate Ryan, USA Today. Brian, going back to the driver fines thing, when you say you don't see a benefit to that, can you explain why there's no benefit to that? Because, I mean, it would seem like if you're punishing somebody for disparaging the sport, you would want to let people know, hey, we're punishing this guy because we don't like what he said. And if you're a member of this room and you're monitoring social media, all the fans want to know more about it, want to understand why. And it would just seem to feed the perception that you're an autocratic regime that doles out punishment in a capricious manner. I mean, why would you not want to tell people, here's why we're doing it?
Sure. I'll explain it to you. We went for 50-something years and never had a system to fine anybody for disparaging remarks in sport. We're the only sport on the planet that had that. So we simply, really in the last couple of years, changed that policy because we thought we needed to. So it's a new policy. It's not something that has been around for a long time. But like I said, we're happy to look at that in the off season. Happy to see what benefit there would be. When it comes to social media, no one is investing more, doing more, encouraging the drivers and everybody in the industry to participate on social media, say what you want, and all the rest. So, we ought not look at one policy and try to define how NASCAR approaches things.
What's the primary benefit of not telling?
Well, the way we looked at it, what would be the benefit of? I mean, the drivers know exactly what we're after. We have these annual meetings with them, right? And then we have semi-annual meetings with them, and we meet with them every weekend at the track. We have very formal meetings in the off season, so they know exactly what we expect out of them. And when they don't handle that. The only way we can control that is obviously a finding system. But look, don't panic over this. We'll look at it in the off season, and if we need to change it, we'll change it. Not a big deal.
George?
Yeah, over here, Brian. George Diaz with the Orlando Sentinel. You mentioned earlier about the chase format and that you're always adjusting. Is there a good chance that the chase format will be tweaked yet again for the following season?
It's possible. I don't know. We take those ideas throughout the year, and we really look at them as carefully as we can. And then what we do is we run them past the team owners and drivers and other everybody else in the industry in the off season before we would do anything. And that's exactly what we did last year going into this year. And we looked at all kinds of things and settled on this as a nice step forward to simplifying the point system and hopefully getting what we have, which is a more competitive chase. And we'll look at it again. I don't know where we'll end up.
Dwight Drum, racetake.com. As far as the chase goes, it's been a really exciting chase. As far as when you came up with the idea of the chase and then when you tweaked it, did you expect that kind of results, and what do you feel about the future?
I actually expected more years like this, frankly, but I couldn't have imagined somebody as incredibly dominating as Jimmy has been in a 5-year run. So you have to give him an enormous amount of credit. But our expectations is that given the balance of things, that we have 43 cars at every event, and given the nature of auto racing and how it unfolds and some of the traditions that you have to obviously respect, I think that the current system and more tweaks will always come, and we'll just have to see what they are.
Hi, Brian. Rodrigo França from Brazil. We're here for the first time, actually, so we're growing interested in NASCAR covering, and I would like you to talk about the growing of NASCAR in other countries than USA, like Brazil, with Nelsinho Piquet and Miguel Paludo.
I think it's great. I was in Mexico City on Wednesday and Thursday working on that very issue. We've got a Hispanic driver from Mexico running in the truck race this weekend. Our diversity program focuses on that. So anytime we are able to attract a talented driver, Juan Pablo being an example, or anyone else, I think that broadens up the sport, makes us more relevant to whatever home country that they're from, and we view that as a very good thing.
Reed?
Reed Spencer with Sporting News. Brian, specifically in terms of what Brad said as far as EFI goes, what was it about that NASCAR thought crossed the line? I mean, it wasn't a case, it seemed to me, of what Denny did impugning the integrity of the sanctioning body, but more or less expressing opinion on the technological direction of the sport at that particular point. Could you at least elaborate on that?
I can't elaborate on that because that we didn't issue a public fine on that. And you read what you can read into what people say just like I can. And when you cross a line that denigrates the direction of the sport or the quality of the racing, we're not going to accept that. Not going to accept it. Happy to have any other criticism, any other complaint. Happy to hear them all. But if I own a restaurant and I say, you know what, the food in my restaurant is not very good, that we're not going to accept it. It's as simple as that.
Jim Utter, last question.
Jim Utter, Charlotte Observer. In light of that, will you be issuing a secret fine to Jamie Allison of Ford Motor Company for saying the almost exact same thing as Brad Keselowski did this week?
Jamie Allison doesn't participate in NASCAR. I mean, he does it in his corporate role. But, come on.
Any other questions? Mike Mulhern, last question.
Yeah, sort of following up on that. One of the problems with the EFI, the electronic fuel injection topic, I think, is the economy's bad and it's going to be expensive or it's going to be another expense. I think that's what Brad was talking about. That's what we've been talking about in here, and that's what engine builders have been talking about. It is an extra expense at a sort of bad time. Is it something that could be postponed maybe for another year or so? Does it have to be right now?
Well, we announced it several years ago, and these are not things you can just pull off the shelf and put them back on and off. I mean, we have agreements with suppliers that have to be met. And you got to remember, why are we doing that? Because we want to be more relevant to the car manufacturers and other green technologies as well. We always said that we will do that in a balanced way. We're not going to be like some other divisions around the world that are heavily emphasized on that. On technology, but we're going to have to do more than we did in the past. It's not because we just feel like doing it or we want to put additional costs on anyone, because they're accepting a lot of money from the car manufacturers, and that's what's under the hood on cars today, and we have to be mindful of that as we make policy.
Thank you, Brian. We'll have Ryan Newman coming up soon. Thank you.
Thank you.